What if I told you that everything you believed in was not true? For many years, it was believed that without modern impermeable materials, it was virtually impossible to survive a prolonged night storm in open terrain. The indigenous peoples of North America spent centuries sleeping in the pouring rain in a completely different way. They applied the strict laws of convection and aerodynamics to maintain a stable temperature inside their traditional shelters. A cold nighttime downpour on the Great Plains or in the eastern woods rapidly draws out thermal energy. The icy wind pierces through, and heavy moisture instantly cools the ground beneath your feet. The shapes of tall conical structures and long wooden frames were designed specifically for quick and safe drainage of rainwater. Each sturdy support and tightly stretched shell mathematically controlled the dangerous flows of raw air. The harsh climate required the construction of a perfect physical barrier between the raging weather and the people relaxing inside. The builders used air insulation methods and heavy heat-absorbing stones to gently heat the entire area at night. These precise engineering calculations made it possible to maintain a completely dry microclimate even during the strongest atmospheric gusts. Watch the video to the end to learn how well-designed internal barriers help to completely control heat loss. Are you ready for the shocking truth? The shape of the traditional cone-shaped dwelling of the Great Plains was designed specifically to withstand powerful air currents. The wind curved around the sloping walls of the structure instead of hitting them with full force. This aerodynamics prevented the interior from cooling rapidly due to strong gusts. During heavy nighttime downpours, the smooth surface of the outer covering acted as a sturdy shield. Water droplets quickly rolled down the tightly stretched, dense material. Moisture did not have time to penetrate the structure and wet the interior. The dry walls retained their insulating properties throughout the cold night. For reliability, the entire structure was securely fastened with long wooden stakes. These stakes were driven deep into the dense soil around the entire perimeter of the dwelling's foundation. The secure fastening prevented strong storm winds from lifting the edges of the covering. Cold, damp air could not penetrate the interior from below. Special attention was always paid to the seams on the entire outer covering. All elements were sewn together with thick threads made of strong, natural fibers. During rain, these threads swelled with moisture and completely closed the tiny holes. This created a completely airtight dome over the heads of the people resting inside. At the top of the dwelling, there were special adjustable ventilation valves. Two long wooden poles allowed the position of these flaps to be changed from the outside. During heavy rain, the valves closed tightly on the windward side. Moisture rolled off them smoothly, as if on modern roof tiles. Only a small opening on the opposite leeward side was left open. The wind created an area of low atmospheric pressure above the small opening. Smoke from the hearth was smoothly drawn out, thanks to the basic laws of aerodynamics. At the same time, the downpour did not enter the central part of the room at all. The angle of the walls also played a crucial role in maintaining constant heat. Warm air from the central hearth rose and reflected off the sloping walls. It then descended evenly along the edges of the entire interior space. This circulation ensured constant, gentle heating of the entire area. The earthen floor inside the building always remained completely dry thanks to external drainage. A shallow trench was often dug around the dwelling to quickly drain water. Rainwater flowed down the outer walls directly into this prepared depression. The soil inside did not cool down from excessive moisture and mud flows. A dry floor was crucial for controlling heat loss. Wet soil absorbs heat energy several times faster than dry soil. Keeping the base dry prevented critical energy loss through the bottom surface. The space remained comfortable and suitable for safe nighttime rest. These architectural solutions created the perfect balance between ventilation and reliable protection. The inhabitants could wait out any storm in warmth and comfort. We would be very interested to hear your thoughts on how these technologies were used. Please write about it in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to learn more. I discovered this quite by accident while studying the structure. An additional barrier made of dense material was often installed inside the main dwelling. This screen was stretched tightly along the walls at a height of about 1.5 meters from the ground. It created a protective air gap between the outer shell and the interior space. This wide air gap worked on the well-known principle of a modern thermos. Cold air penetrating through the outer shell descended down this corridor. It did not mix at all with the warm air in the central part of the room. The inner screen reliably blocked all cold night drafts. Descending, the heavy cold air passed under the edge of the inner screen. Then it rushed to the central hearth to maintain a constant fire. The fire received the necessary fresh oxygen without cooling the comfortable recreation area. This created an ideal natural system of constant supply ventilation. The light air heated by the hearth immediately rose to the very top of the dome. There it flowed unhindered through the open upper ventilation valves. The inner screen gently directed this flow like a wide exhaust pipe. The room quickly filled with pleasant warmth without the formation of a suffocating layer of smoke. The lower edge of the inner screen was always pressed tightly to the ground with heavy objects. This completely prevented cold air from entering at floor level. The area for comfortable sleep was located behind this reliable barrier. The heat was retained exactly where people spent long hours. An additional wide horizontal canopy was sometimes stretched across the upper part of the room. It was located directly above the rest area, similar to a modern fabric awning. This canopy effectively reflected the rising heat back down to the people. The awning also provided excellent protection from accidental cold water droplets. The material for such an internal screen was chosen by craftsmen with particular care. It had to be as dense as possible and not allow strong winds to pass through. The surface was often specially coated with natural resins for additional reliable insulation. The smooth texture facilitated the rapid drainage of any condensation that formed. Moisture from warm air often condensed on the cold outer wall. Large drops of water flowed down strictly along the inner side of the outer covering. Thanks to the air gap, this cold condensation did not touch the inner screen. The moisture simply drained into the soil outside the comfortable living area. The temperature difference between the exterior and interior could reach tens of degrees. The screen bravely took on the main physical load of containing the temperature difference. The air inside the gap served as an excellent invisible natural insulator. The cold outside simply could not overcome this air barrier. Convection was controlled by the builders with remarkable mathematical precision. How effective do you think such an air cushion is compared to modern insulation materials? Write your detailed opinion below. In the next chapter, you will learn how controlling the hearth helped to survive the most violent rainstorm. A secret that will change the industry forever. The hearth in the center of the dwelling was not just an open flame for night lighting. It was an incredibly complex system for storing and distributing thermal energy over the long term. The basis of this efficient system was large river stones laid around the fire. Stones have high physical density and excellent heat capacity. While the wood was burning, they eagerly absorbed a huge amount of thermal energy. Even after the active flames died down, the stones continued to radiate intense heat. They worked like massive, reliable central heating batteries. During heavy nighttime rains, the intensity of the fire always had to be reduced. Heavy rain could get in through the ventilation hole and create an unpleasant excess of steam. A small but very hot flame steadily maintained the temperature of the heated stones. The heat gently emanated from the heated stone in an even and stable flow. Thick logs of hardwood were used to maintain a long, even burn. Such prepared firewood smoldered for hours without forming high, dangerous flames. They produced many large coals that maintained an extremely high temperature for a long time. A compact, dense pile of hot coals was much more effective than a huge fire. The shape of the stone hearth itself also contributed to the long-term preservation of heat. The fire was carefully lit in a small depression in the center of the earthen floor. The sides of this earthen depression protected the coals from direct side drafts. The heat was directed strictly upward and to the sides to heat the room. Free space was always left around the hearth for proper air circulation. Cold air currents from the walls smoothly approached the stones and quickly heated up. The heated air immediately rose to the ceiling and spread throughout the entire area. The process of natural heat exchange took place continuously and as evenly as possible. In the event of an unexpected moisture breakthrough, the hot stones instantly evaporated the water. The resulting clean, warm steam further heated the entire interior space. The dry, prickly heat was replaced by a comfortable, humid environment without a sharp drop in the overall temperature. This physical effect was very similar to the operation of a traditional portable bath. Ordinary ash from burnt wood served as an excellent natural heat insulator. Experienced people never cleaned the hearth completely before going to sleep for a long time. They carefully covered the hot coals with a thick layer of ash to reliably preserve the heat. In the morning, it was enough to rake away the gray ash and put in fresh, dry kindling. The correct location of the hearth completely eliminated the risk of accidental ignition of the interior. A safe distance from walls and sleeping areas was calculated with a large margin. Human safety always came first when designing the space. The heat reached people smoothly in soft and completely safe waves. Controlling fire required a deep practical understanding of natural processes. Knowledge of the unique properties of wood and stone ensured reliable heating in all weather conditions. Such skills were passed down from generation to generation as the greatest treasure. Like this video if you are interested in this engineering approach to survival. What big companies are hiding? Protecting the body began with creating the right clothing from ultra-dense materials. The long processing involved deep smoking over thick wood smoke. The smoke penetrated deep into the pores of the material and permanently changed its structure. Smoking made the material incredibly resistant to prolonged exposure to water and moisture. When wet, such clothing did not become stiff and did not lose its original elasticity at all. Water collected on the surface in large drops and simply rolled down to the ground. At the same time, the natural material continued to breathe freely and remove moisture from the body. The main fundamental principle of heat retention was the well-thought-out multi-layered nature of the clothing. The first thin layer fit snugly to the body and maintained the base temperature. The air between the numerous layers of clothing created a reliable, invisible thermal insulation cushion. The cold wind was physically unable to penetrate these dense air barriers. The outer layer of clothing was made of the most durable and heavy materials. It served as an impenetrable windproof and moisture-repellent armor in a storm. Often, outer capes had wide hems to reliably protect the legs from slanting rain. Water flowed smoothly down them directly to the ground without touching the sensitive inner layers. The seams on the clothing were treated with special care to prevent even the slightest leakage. Strong threads were used that swelled instantly at the slightest contact with rainwater. The needle holes were completely and securely sealed thanks to this physical effect. Cold water had no chance of penetrating the suit. The collars and wide sleeves were tightly fastened with leather laces. This completely prevented heated air from escaping from under the clothing into the wind. Body heat remained inside the closed circuit during the long cold hours. Maintaining the internal temperature was the key to comfortable nighttime survival. Special hoods made of similar dense materials were used to reliably protect the head. The human head rapidly loses a tremendous amount of heat in strong, cold winds. The hood tightly covered the neck and ears from the piercing, icy air currents. Water did not get behind the collar at all, even during the heaviest downpour. The footwear also consisted of several well-designed insulating layers. Soft, dry grass was placed inside to create an additional effective air layer. The grass absorbed excess moisture from the feet and retained the necessary heat. The outer surface of the footwear was generously lubricated with natural fats for complete protection from deep puddles. Even when the outer layer became heavily wet, the wearer continued to feel completely warm. The inner layers always remained dry thanks to the strategic distribution of materials. Moisture did not take away the body's energy through the dangerous process of direct physical evaporation. Thermoregulation worked without a single failure in the harshest weather conditions. The clothing was a complex, high-tech protective suit for its harsh times. Would you like to try on such a multi-layered system of protection against the cold? Share your impressions in the comments below. In the next chapter, you will learn how elevations above the ground help to escape the icy torrents. Direct contact between the human body and cold, damp ground is deadly, especially during a prolonged night storm. The ground has enormous heat capacity and acts as a huge radiator, quickly drawing life energy from a person lying on it. This destructive physical process is called thermal conductivity or conduction in science, and it has been the cause of illness for many inexperienced travelers. To effectively prevent these fatal heat losses, Indigenous peoples have always created special elevated sleeping places that serve as a reliable barrier. The main frame for such reliable and durable beds was usually assembled from strong but sufficiently flexible willow rods. These rods were tightly and securely bound together with animal sinews or bark fibers into a dense, elastic wooden lattice. This engineering design safely raised the sleeping person several dozen centimeters above the cold floor. Thanks to this, the heavy cold air, which always sinks down, accumulated at the very ground, without touching the resting people at all. Under such a bed, a large empty space was naturally formed for free and constant air circulation. This air gap served as an ideal and powerful insulator between the damp ground and the heated human body. The cold air currents that inevitably penetrated from the walls passed freely under the sleeping area without taking away the warmth from the sleeper. They were directed straight to the central hearth, where they were heated and rose upward, without cooling the surface of the bed itself. A very thick layer of various natural insulating materials was always tightly laid on the finished wooden lattice. Large bundles of dry long grass, specially prepared for this purpose, were often used as a soft and warm base. The grass contained a huge number of tiny air bubbles inside its thin, hollow stems, which made it an excellent insulator. This natural springy mattress not only retained internal heat perfectly, but also provided high softness for a good night's sleep. On top of the dry grass, people carefully spread thick coverings made of well-tanned and moisture-resistant hides of large animals. They created a smooth, clean, and comfortable surface for a long night's rest after a hard day. The dense texture of the leather completely prevented even the slightest penetration of cold air from below through the layers of grass. All the heat emanating from the human body was gently reflected back from this layer, warming the sleeping person throughout the night. In the event of a sudden and very heavy downpour, when water could accidentally penetrate the dwelling, such an elevation literally saved it from flooding. Cold rainwater usually just spread across the earthen floor, completely failing to reach the high sleeping places. People remained completely dry and safe, even when fairly large puddles formed inside the living area. All excess moisture gradually and quietly drained into the deep soil, without causing the slightest disturbance to the resting hunters. Heavy, multi-layered, and very dense fur capes were used as reliable shelter from above. They formed a completely closed and stable microclimate around a stationary person, which did not depend on the weather outside. The warm air produced by breathing and emanating from the skin was reliably retained under this massive cover. This created the amazing effect of a small individual warm cocoon inside a large, cool room. The edges of these upper capes were always neatly and tightly tucked under the body on all sides, creating something like a modern sleeping bag. This completely eliminated the formation of accidental gaps and the penetration of insidious drafts under the blanket. The cold night air simply flowed around the sealed, insulated cocoon on the outside, with no chance of getting inside to the body. As a result, a person could sleep peacefully in the most comfortable conditions until the early morning, when the sun warmed the earth. In some harsh northern regions, such elevations were made even more substantial in the form of solid and wide earthen platforms. These platforms were located along all the walls and rose quite high above the central passageway of the dwelling. The earthen floors were thickly covered with a very thick layer of fresh coniferous branches collected in the forest. The needles worked perfectly as an additional springy layer, and their pleasant, strong smell repelled insects and helped to breathe more easily. Such platforms provided reliable protection against convection and prevented any loss of internal energy. A thoughtful engineering approach to the very organization of the sleeping area ensured that people retained precious heat in all conditions. Deep rest on such properly equipped beds completely restored strength for new achievements. Simple physics in the hands of ancient craftsmen worked flawlessly for the personal comfort and general safety of each person. What historians and archaeologists have found in old archival records amazes the imagination of modern man. In the northeast of the continent, indigenous peoples built massive and majestic longhouses capable of accommodating dozens of families at a time. These enormous structures were built on a sturdy wooden frame and completely covered with sheets of elm or ash bark. Every detail of this complex construction was mathematically calculated to withstand the most powerful storm winds and prolonged rains. The tree bark was laid on the sloping, semicircular roof and high walls in a special traditional way, strictly overlapping. The upper sheets partially covered the lower rows, similar to how modern durable roof tiles are arranged in our homes. Rainwater rolled freely off this smooth surface, with no chance of seeping into the living quarters. The smooth and oily texture of the fresh bark significantly accelerated the effective removal of all excess moisture from the walls of the building. Inside each longhouse, there were several central hotspots, evenly distributed along the entire length. The heat from these numerous sources of fire was smoothly distributed throughout the huge interior space of the common room. The heated air slowly rose to the high semicircular roof and created a powerful and stable thermal cushion there. This completely compensated for the natural cooling of the outer walls of the house under the influence of heavy cold rain. Comfortable wooden sleeping platforms in such large houses were always arranged in 2 tiers along all the side walls. The top shelves were located in a cozy area where the warmest air accumulated, making them the perfect place to sleep in the cold. The lower platforms were also reliably protected from accidental cold drafts by special wooden partitions and screens. All the heat inside the house was distributed by craftsmen with precise consideration of the strict laws of physics and thermodynamics. Ventilation openings located at the very top of the roof could be closed at any time with special movable pieces of bark. When heavy rain began, these flaps could be easily moved into the desired position using very long wooden poles. Thanks to this, the water did not flood the interior hearths at all and did not extinguish the life-saving bright flames of the fires. At the same time, the smoke still found its way out through small technological gaps left by the craftsmen. Massive and very thick wooden doors tightly closed the entrances to the house at both ends, protecting the inhabitants. Additionally, all doorways were covered from the inside with heavy skins or woven materials to completely eliminate drafts. This well-designed vestibule system created an excellent buffer zone between the icy street and the warm living quarters. Sudden and dangerous temperature changes were completely and permanently eliminated, thanks to the wisdom of the builders. Large stocks of thick, dry firewood and provisions collected during the summer were often placed along the long interior walls. These massive objects worked perfectly as an additional layer of internal home insulation, absorbing the cold. They bravely took on some of the cold coming from the freezing exterior walls and kept it from reaching the people inside. The usable space in the house was always used with maximum efficiency to preserve every bit of warmth and comfort. The longhouse of the Iroquois was a veritable wooden fortress, capable of withstanding any raging natural element. Could you design such an effective ventilation and heating system without the use of modern computer calculations and instruments? Share your profound thoughts on the craftsmanship of ancient builders. In the next chapter, you will learn how soil formations and landscape features turned an ordinary dwelling into an ideal thermos. Earth houses were massive semi-underground structures with a sturdy wooden frame. The main insulating material in these unique buildings was a thick layer of ordinary soil and turf. The earth was tightly packed on top of the wooden roof and walls, creating a very reliable dome. The thickness of this earth layer could easily reach half a meter at the top. Soil has truly enormous heat capacity and reacts very slowly to sudden changes in weather. During a cold nighttime downpour, the outer layer of soil would get very wet and cool down. However, this icy cold could not quickly penetrate through the thickness of the material into the interior of the building. The deep inner layers of soil always remain warm and completely dry. The turf on the roof was often a living layer with densely intertwined grass roots. This living root system securely held the soil together and completely prevented it from being washed away by the rain. Water was retained in the top layer like a sponge without penetrating the living space. Excess rainwater slowly flowed down the sloping earthen dome directly onto the ground. The internal temperature in such an unusual house remained incredibly stable all year round. In winter, the massive walls reliably retained the heat from the hearth, preventing even the slightest leakage outside. The air inside quickly heated up and transferred some of its energy to the dry earth on the ceiling. This physical process created an ideal, mild microclimate without sudden temperature changes. The smooth dome shape provided the highest resistance to powerful storm winds. Air currents flowed very smoothly around the hill-like structure without creating destructive vortices. The wind was physically unable to blow heat out of the room through thin cracks or joints. The dwelling was absolutely and flawlessly airtight from a strict aerodynamic point of view. The entrance to the earthen house was a long, narrow-covered corridor. This earthen tunnel acted as a long, reliable airlock between the street and the room. Cold air with heavy rain could not overcome this winding path at all. The harsh weather outside always remained far beyond the warm perimeter of the dwelling. For effective smoke removal, A small square opening was always left in the center of the roof. During very heavy rain, a temporary canopy made of twigs was quickly installed over this opening. The canopy broke up large drops of water, completely preventing the central hearth from flooding. The smoke continued to flow smoothly and unhindered out the sides of this protective canopy. The interior earthen walls were often additionally lined with vertical wooden logs. The wood created an additional layer of insulation between the damp soil and the warm air. This prevented dry soil from accidentally falling out and significantly improved the aesthetic appearance of the interior. Thermal energy was gently reflected from the wood back into the center of the large room. In conditions of constant, strong winds and open spaces, an earthen house was the most reliable shelter. Thick earthen walls completely muffled the noise of the storm raging outside. The inhabitants could sleep peacefully while the fierce elements raged on the surface. Silence and absolute warmth were the main advantages of such massive architecture. The massive and complex construction required truly enormous physical effort during the long construction period. However, these colossal costs were fully offset by decades of maximum comfort. The earth proved its incredible effectiveness as the best and most affordable natural insulator. The structure worked flawlessly according to the laws of physics, preserving the lives and health of people. In northern regions with harsh cold climates, protection from wet snow required special solutions. The peoples of the Subarctic built temporary, reliable shelters from a frame of thin poles and a thick layer of spruce branches. Fir and pine branches were laid in a very dense layer, like primitive tiles. The sloping green walls of such a hut quickly and efficiently drained away any excess moisture. Fresh pine needles always contain a large amount of natural resins and vegetable oils. These substances have excellent and extremely powerful water-repellent properties. Cold raindrops rolled easily off the needles without soaking the inner layers of the wood at all. Inside such a forest shelter, it always remained incredibly dry and completely windless. The main constant source of heat in such temporary camps was a very long bonfire. It was constructed from several very thick logs neatly stacked on top of each other. The bonfire burned incredibly slowly and very evenly throughout the long night. It did not require constant feeding with wood and provided a powerful stream of radiant heat. For maximum physical efficiency, a tall reflective screen was often built behind the fire. This screen was densely woven from green branches or created from a large pile of stones. It intercepted all the heat radiation escaping into the dark forest and directed it back into the shelter. Thanks to this screen, the temperature inside the hut rose significantly and very quickly. The powerful heat from the fire strongly heated the sloping, green roof of the shelter from the inside. Dry and very warm air accumulated under the ceiling, creating a comfortable zone for people. The flow of heat radiation was so strong that it allowed people to sleep without very thick blankets. The main thing was to mathematically calculate the safe distance from the fire to the walls. A thick layer of fresh spruce branches was used as reliable insulation from the frozen ground. The branches were laid in a special, clever way, creating a very high and incredibly springy platform. This layer was half a meter thick and completely blocked the icy cold from the ground. The air between the elastic branches acted as an excellent and completely free insulator. During heavy snowfall, fluffy snow accumulated on the roof of the hut in a very thick layer. This snow was not cleared at all, as it served as excellent additional insulation. Porous, fresh snow contains a lot of air and completely blocks the cold, piercing wind. It easily turned a light summer shelter into a real warm and very cozy capsule. To prevent acrid smoke from the fire from accumulating under the roof, a wide ventilation opening was left. The shape of the shelter greatly contributed to the powerful natural upward draft of warm air. The smoke quickly and easily escaped outside without causing any discomfort to those resting inside. The ventilation worked perfectly thanks to the significant difference between the outside and inside temperatures. When the storm wind changed direction abruptly, the shelter could be easily rebuilt or closed on the other side. The incredible flexibility of the structure allowed it to instantly adapt to absolutely any vagaries of subarctic weather. Materials for urgent construction were always in abundance in the endless forest. Construction took a minimum of precious time and saved a huge amount of physical effort. The ability to competently use geometry and the laws of heat reflection saved many lives in the frosty taiga. the simplest laws of physics easily turned a simple pile of branches into an absolutely reliable home. With their own hands, people created a warm oasis in the middle of an endless cold and incredibly humid desert. Natural, readily available materials worked much more effectively than any expensive artificial fabrics. A unique method of preparing the body was used to provide reliable protection against hypothermia in conditions of extreme humidity. Human skin was generously lubricated with an ultra-thick layer of natural vegetable fats. This barrier created a completely invisible but very strong protective film over the entire surface of the body. The fat completely covered the pores and reliably prevented direct physical contact between the icy water and the skin. Water that accidentally got on the lubricated skin instantly collected in droplets and rolled off very quickly. This powerful hydrophobic effect completely prevented moisture from lingering and evaporating from the body's surface. The evaporation of ice-cold water is the most important process that removes heat energy from the human body. Blocking this evaporation completely preserved precious internal heat even in the most terrible weather. The layer of fat acted as a thin natural wetsuit, creating a microscopic layer of warm air. This ancient method allowed people to feel incredibly comfortable even when their clothes got wet in the pouring rain. The body's thermoregulation was not disturbed at all by the sudden, dangerous cooling of all external tissues. The internal body temperature always remained at an extremely stable and safe level. In addition, the transparent film of fat perfectly protected the skin from drying out and painful cracking in strong cold winds. Cold winds very quickly dry out exposed areas, causing microtraumas and enormous heat loss. The lubricated skin completely retained its original elasticity and powerful natural protective function. The face and exposed hands suffered significantly less from any weather conditions. Sometimes finely ground plant roots and natural pigments were added to the fat base. These components had a very slight warming effect, significantly increasing the flow of hot blood to the skin surface. Improved blood circulation additionally and very powerfully warmed all peripheral remote areas of the body. This minimized the risk of local frostbite of sensitive fingers and other exposed areas. This protective treatment was applied before each outing in bad weather or before going to sleep in a damp room. The thick protective layer was absorbed very slowly, providing long-lasting and reliable protection for several hours. In conditions of prolonged, continuous rain, this was the most affordable means of staying healthy. The body itself became an absolutely insurmountable barrier against any raging elements. The fat impregnation also excellently protected clothing from the inside against the constant exposure to cold sweat. The moisture secreted by the body did not soak through the inner layers of clothing, keeping them completely dry. Dry fabric continues to retain warm air and function perfectly as an airtight thermos. The moisture balance was always maintained at the most optimal and exceptionally comfortable level. This ancient survival method required a minimal amount of readily available resources. A supply of the necessary composition was always found in the personal equipment of absolutely any experienced traveler. Its extreme compactness and tremendous effectiveness made this remedy simply indispensable in extreme conditions. The scientific and pragmatic approach to the biology of the body is striking in its incredible ingenious simplicity. The layer of fat was carefully washed off only after the danger of severe hypothermia had finally passed. In warm weather, it was easily removed with fine sand or special cleansing herbal infusions. Until that moment, the protective invisible armor completely protected a person from the piercing icy dampness. Nature itself suggested to people ideal and 100% effective solutions for complex survival. The use of modern hydrophobic materials is the basis of the most advanced waterproof technologies. In the distant past, people easily achieved the same amazing effect using simple natural ingredients. A deep understanding of physiology and heat exchange processes saved people from freezing rain more reliably than any shelter. True protection of the body always began right on the surface of human skin. Even the most ideal and durable shelter is completely useless without the ability to build a warming fire. During any prolonged storm, successfully finding dry wood becomes an absolutely impossible task. Therefore, preserving untouched reserves of dry firewood and kindling was a matter of the utmost importance. For this purpose, Special airtight hiding places were always created inside or directly adjacent to the living quarters. Kindling was always carefully stored in special waterproof bags or sealed, sturdy containers. Super dry birch bark or very fine chips from highly resinous trees were used as kindling. These natural components can ignite instantly, even from a small spark in conditions of high humidity. The bags were tied very tightly and carefully hung from the ceiling in the driest and warmest area. The supply of large firewood was always neatly stacked inside the dwelling along the outer load-bearing walls. The logs were laid evenly in incredibly dense rows, forming an additional massive barrier to cold air. Moisture from wet clothing or breath was not allowed to get on this valuable strategic reserve. Ventilation of the room ensured constant circulation of dry, warm air around the entire woodpile. If there was a catastrophic shortage of space inside, the firewood was tightly covered with large pieces of bark right on the street. The bark was neatly laid in overlapping layers, creating a completely waterproof canopy over all the valuable resources. Water flowed freely down the sloping edges without affecting the lower, vital layers of dry wood. The logs were always and under all circumstances completely ready for immediate use in the hearth. Particular attention was always paid to preserving the hot coals for the fastest possible fire starting. The smoldering red coals were carefully placed in special sturdy horn or thick clay containers. Inside such a container, a special environment was created with minimal access to fresh oxygen. The coals could smolder quietly in this closed state for many long hours without going out or flaring up. The portable smoldering fire made it possible to quickly organize a hot hearth when it was necessary to urgently change the place of camp in the rain. There was no need to waste precious time trying to strike a spark with frozen, wet hands. All you had to do was pour out the hot coals and quickly add dry, resinous kindling from a bag. The fire flared up powerfully in a matter of seconds, warming everyone who was soaked to the skin. A very simple but incredibly effective method was always used to dry inevitably damp firewood. The damp logs were carefully laid out around the hot hearth at a strictly measured safe distance. The heat from the strong fire slowly but surely evaporated all the water from the internal structure of the wet wood. By the time new logs were needed for the fire, they were completely and perfectly dry. The use of special resinous knots from old fallen trees always ensured an incredibly hot flame. Such pieces of dense wood do not absorb rainwater at all due to the highest concentration of natural resin. They were very easy to find even in a thoroughly wet forest and could be used immediately for quick ignition. The resin always produced an incredibly high temperature and a very even, powerful light. Strategic mathematical planning of fuel consumption guarantees survival in absolutely any severe storm. Extra precious logs were never burned without extreme necessity. Strict resource conservation was deeply ingrained in the daily habits of absolutely every person. Fire was deeply respected and incredibly cherished as the most important value for the entire tribe. Proper and competent organization of supplies easily turned a cold cave into a very warm home. Without this most important element, all other technologies instantly lost their entire meaning. Logistics and careful use of fuel saved huge communities from certain freezing. Fire has always been the most important part of absolutely any reliable shelter from the weather. We have studied in detail the specific engineering solutions used by indigenous peoples to combat the nighttime cold and downpours. Air gaps between the inner screens and the outer covering reliably block the icy wind. Massive river stones in the hearths slowly release the accumulated heat energy over many hours. Tightly fitted sheets of bark and multi-layered smoked clothing physically prevented heavy moisture from reaching the body. Every detail of the traditional dwelling served a strict physical function to maintain a dry microclimate. High sleeping platforms made of willow rods reliably isolated sleeping people from the frozen, damp ground. Smoke escaped freely through adjustable upper vents without losing precious heated air. These proven methods helped to completely control convection even during the strongest gusts of stormy wind. Studying such practical survival methods allows us to examine in detail the way of life in past centuries. Write your suggestions for topics for our future historical videos in the comments. Your activity helps us find new verifiable facts about the lives of the indigenous peoples of North America. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for new detailed videos about historical technologies.